Hey everyone, welcome for another exciting panel from our conference. We have Trailblazers and Innovation here, empowering startups, scaling growth, and redefining success. Super excited to welcome Jason Malone. He's an investor and advisor, born and raised in Carson, California. Jason attended the University of New Mexico on a football scholarship and ultimately received his bachelor's degree from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. After graduating from college, he moved to New York City to work on Wall Street and Merrill Lynch. And while there, he worked on various roles, including investment banking. So super excited to catch up with Jason. We have Khalil Simmons. Khalil is a account executive at Google. He's a driven digital marketing professional who thrives on helping businesses achieve transformative growth. Uh, Actually was at a party with Sergey Brin over the weekend, so that was very interesting. So super, yeah, super excited to welcome you. And also Carrie Aguilar. She's a Cleveland Boomerang. Carrie Aguilar has built a career in tech and on the West Coast, most recently spending the last 5 years as head of sales, training, and enablement at DoorDash. She now spends her time building her sales strategy business, Innovate Growth Partners, with the goal of supporting female founded startups, helping them succeed. And she's doing a lot of amazing work there in that space right now. So, good afternoon. Good morning to probably Jason. How's everyone doing so far?
So far, so good.
Doing great.
Oh, good. It's a good day. It's Friday. Can't complain too much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always one of the best days of the year, especially the end of the year. Friday the 13th, though, that's a little interesting. So let's go ahead and just kind of kick it off with you, Khalil. I think with your, I guess it's how long have you been at Google? Just to for those who aren't familiar, maybe tell them a little bit about how long you've been at Google and maybe what you were doing before there.
Absolutely. So I've been with Google for almost 6 years now. Been fortunate to work my way up through the company. Before Google, little context. I got my degree from the University of Missouri. Business administration was my bachelor's with emphasis in marketing, and then a certificate in sales and customer development. Upon graduation, I joined General Mills, where I moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota in the wintertime um, to start my career. I joined their business management associate program, working on the convenience business mostly, but convenience special markets. Then was promoted, moved to Tampa, Florida, kind of managed their Florida region. And after leaving General Mills, wanted to try something different, right? I wanted to try to get my hand in tech. I don't know why I thought going into AT&T corporate first was I guess a logical next step, but ended up moving to Dallas to work with AT&T corporate, where I was there, very short-lived career there, but managed to be noticed by a recruiter at Google, where went through the interview process and was fortunate to join the company as an account strategist. So I started at Google, moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, working with small to medium sized businesses, trying to help them grow at scale. From there, kind of moved my way up, right? So jumping from Ann Arbor back home to Chicago on our accelerated growth team, and now finally being able to kind of get to New York. I was an account manager within our large customer sales organization, and now recently an account executive. So I've kind of been all over the map geographically, but also within my career I've been able to have a wealth of different experiences.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And just a follow up, I guess, what advice would you give to young professionals who are looking to break into tech industry and make an impact?
That's a great question. I feel like I get asked that question quite a bit now. I think tech's a hot topic within the career space. I would say to best advice I can give you, right? It's don't necessarily focus on the shiny companies that to or think that there's one path to getting into tech. My background is very sales oriented. I had no experience in tech, didn't know what, a path into break into tech looked like. But I did rely on the skill set that I did have and tried to find my path that way, right? I kind of made tech work for me versus trying to find a way to kind of fit myself into this ideal or perfect expectation for what you think someone breaking into tech looks like. I think that figuring out your strengths, honing those skills, and and then figuring out where tech works for you is probably the best advice I can give. And you'll find your path, right? Whether it's getting into some of the the big tech companies early on in your career, or starting at a startup and working your way to kind of get to where you want to be at the end of the day. But no path is the same. Just figure out what works for you. Lean on the skills that you have been able to develop, and you'll end up exactly where you need to be.
Love that. And I think that's a perfect segue for Carrie. And we're coming to you after this, Jason. But, Carrie, I guess, for folks to know, how did you get, at DoorDash at that period of time? And then from there, what inspired you to start your own thing and now really focus on helping women founders from that experience?
Yeah. Um, so I guess a little bit of background on me. I started what I would say my true sales career, because I am a salesperson at heart. I worked at Yelp in pre-IPO in 2011. I started in their sales development program. And so I sold Yelp ads for about 5 years in a number of different capacities, living in Phoenix, Arizona. And I loved sales. I loved getting to learn and know different businesses. And I was just genuinely curious. And I was very coachable, and that was super helpful. And then I was also the adult in the room. So everyone at Yelp was like 21 and I was 26. So they immediately were like, at least you're older than everyone. So I was naturally seen as a leader on the floor, on the sales floor. And because of that and a number of different things, I'm kind of downplaying some of my attributes. I went into management and training, and I transitioned to another startup called Varsity Tutors, which is an ed tech startup. And from there, I became head of training there. And personally, I have an 8-year-old, and at the time she was about 2, and I was working like 14-hour days. And at some point, something had to give. So I had made enough money where I just decided to take a nap. So I took about a 2-month nap. And during that time, my I guess my mentor reached out to me, and he had known the head. He was actually the first sales rep at DoorDash. And he had no training experience like in general, but he had just said yes and yes and yes to every single position that came to him at DoorDash. And DoorDash was at the time, we had only had about 18% market share. So we weren't like the behemoth. We were definitely still the underdog. But it was a very exciting space. It was 2018. And I just took a call and had a conversation. And he basically said, we need someone who's been early at a business, who has the experience of building processes, and who's able to pivot and able to build, and who's hungry to do it. And that was me. And so I was brought on. And at the time, DoorDash had just we were in the process of raising our Series C. So we weren't, it wasn't like we were, Series A, Series B. But we only had about 30 to 50 sales reps. And so we were still very scrappy. Like our sales office was very dingy, very, very dingy. We had not yet gotten, the money yet for like fancy anything. But yeah. And so I joined DoorDash. I was there for just under 6 years. And what's interesting is with the pandemic, Not only was DoorDash, understandably, we had some huge, tailwinds with the pandemic, because everyone was home ordering food. We had an incredibly successful IPO in December of 2020. But personally, my family was able to relocate because my team that I had since scaled was able. I had then grown it, and we were all remote. So I was able to move from Phoenix to Cleveland. And I know that you guys were all kind of saying where you're from. I am from Cleveland, and my family is from Cleveland. And I have just a really big, like, you know how the Kelsey brothers love Cleveland? Like it's like me. I'm like the Kelsey brothers. In fact, I'm from Cleveland Heights, so like I can tell you, and like they're it doesn't matter, but like they're my
He's like, I know
neighbors.
them.
No, exactly. My neighbors are like best friends with them and like own real estate with them. So like we're like basically best friends. But
Mhm.
anyways, not really. I've never met them. But
I love that.
but anyways, I just have this big I really couldn't stand like being in my office and not really giving back to the community that I was living in. I was just kind of living here. Um and and then I think on top of that, there is a time when you're in an experience, and I'm sure, or maybe you guys have been in this space where I was brought into a meeting at DoorDash where basically it was a leadership meeting, and they were actually talking about diversity, and they were saying, hey, we need someone to take leadership in this diversity group. And they were all looking at me, and I I was like, oh, okay. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I grew up pretty privileged, and I was like, okay, well, if me, the white girl who like went to boarding school, is considered diverse, like we're in a this is pretty fucked up. We've got some pretty big issues, but as I got, more senior at DoorDash and realized there were less and less women, and I gave birth to a daughter, I just realized like whether it was my personality that made me be a leader. Like, I don't necessarily think it's my gender that means anything, but there needs to be more women that look like me, or like there needs to be more women, period, that do what I do. And so therefore, when I got to a place at DoorDash where I was like, I have this much equity and I want to give back to Cleveland and I want more women to do what I do, that's why I ultimately left. So it was probably a really
Yeah.
long,
No, I mean, I love that. I think in San Francisco, definitely there needs to be just more people, kind of more diverse people taking opportunities to move out there, and it's it's a place that I think you have to be seen over a period of time, kind of like a high school to before things start opening up. But Jason, I think kind of following that up to you, you have an interesting beginning working in Wall Street. Jason and I actually met in Cleveland at the Futureland conference.
oh,
Um,
nice.
and, not to name drop or anything, you now work with a lot of different, high net worth individuals in sports and different industries. So maybe can you talk about that experience from leaving Wall Street to now, kind of, working in the wild, wild west, essentially, with everything going on and NIL and all this, great stuff happening in sports. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Tell me all about this. This is fascinating.
Yeah, so while I was working in New York at Merrill Lynch, I would say the last role that I had was focused on portfolio allocation for pension funds, insurance funds, and ultra high net worth individuals as it pertains to their investments in private equity, venture capital, hedge funds, real estate, and so forth. And so what I realized a lot of times, when I was sitting on the other side of the table, I was sitting on the other side of the table from a former operator that had an exit. And so that really sort of piqued my interest as it relates to like, okay, well, if I'm advising them, how do I get to the other side of the table? What is it that I need to do? At that point, I'd been working at Merrill for about 7 years or so, and I, achieved a level of status within the company, but I didn't necessarily see myself being there for the rest of my career. And I also was just seeking more of a work-life balance. And then lastly, being I'm originally from California, I wanted to, be in a position where I could get back to the West Side. So all those things considered, I decided to go back to business school, got my MBA at the University of Chicago. And while I was there, I was really looking for like, what was the next step? What was going to be that seat that catapulted me into the sort of operator role where I can, scale my company and then have an exit, and then now have investment bankers vying for my business, right?
Mhm.
I initially started with me working with a partner of mine and raising some capital to make an acquisition of a portfolio of restaurants in the Chicago area. So the idea was to pursue entrepreneurship through acquisition, right? So instead of trying to build a business from scratch, I can buy my way into scale, right? And so I've always sort of looked at that as sort of the path, right? Ideas are a mile a minute. However, the execution of the idea, the ability to, lay the groundwork and have all of the components in place for said idea to execute, there's just a lot of stars that need to align. And obviously people do it, but from the standpoint of assessing risk, right? Just having that mindset coming from Wall Street, always looking at risk allocation, how am I assessing the opportunity? I saw the idea or the notion of acquiring existing cash flow as a little bit less risky than trying to create cash flow out of thin air, right? And so as generally the lens through which I saw things, started off with the franchise businesses, franchise restaurants. While I was in that space, funny enough, I quickly realized that I was not excited about the food industry. And there was just a lot of different things that I didn't necessarily know in terms of blind spots. And as it pertains to managing, not only a business in the food industry, but also a restaurant, right? And so after being in the space for about 3-4 years, my partner and I decided to exit the business. But we still had the same mindset of like focusing on acquiring businesses that have existing cash flow and what that could look like. So that
So
led
did you
to,
sell? Sorry, did you sell? When you
we
say
did.
exit
We,
the business, did you
we had an
sell?
asset sale. Yeah, we did an
Okay.
asset sale. So,
Okay.
nothing to write home to mom about.
Right.
But it was an asset sale to essentially what I call stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
Um, but we used that as an opportunity to move into the sports and media side of trying to build a business. So what I started doing was acquiring different monetizing media assets such as YouTube channels, Instagram channels, and building up a portfolio of assets in that realm that were monetizing, whether it was through ads, whether it was through just the management of those respective channels, or monetizing through e-commerce, right? And so we looked at it through those 3 different lenses and started to acquire digital assets in that realm. And through doing that, I started to build up, a resume of having that skill set, but also a Rolodex of people that were in that space, both high profile athletes, entertainers, as well as entertainment companies that were in this space. And so being in Los Angeles, it was just a great ecosystem to sort of be in. But what I found myself being exposed to constantly was people asking me, "Oh, you used to work on Wall Street. Can you help me with this? You used to work in finance. Can you look at this transaction for me?" Right. And so in addition to me, being an operator, I basically decided to launch my own practice where I can, help people as a fiduciary in their aspect and that their aspects of business. And so that has opened up quite a few doors for me, so I'm super excited about. But, I know I've been talking for a minute, so I'll pass it back to you, Manny.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Carrie, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm gonna jump to a question that Justin in the chat asked. to you, Khalil. He was interested, and I know Justin, he's based in Milwaukee. He's doing some great stuff with Generator, helping a lot of businesses out there grow. But he was wondering, are you technical or non-technical?
I'm not technical. Even during my time when I was a startup founder, very quickly realized the difference in skill set and what's needed. But I will not sit here and lie to you and say that I am technical in any way.
Nice, nice. No worries. Yeah. Well, and I'll pivot it to just any, recommendations for moving into next year. Are there any tools that or educational books, outlets that you recommend to maybe help a founder or a young professional accomplish their goals?
There's a particular book that when I was in the startup world, the startup problem, I feel like it's really popular. I forget the author, but that I would say that's like your general outline. If you are becoming a first time founder, even if you're not a first time founder and you know are working on your second, third time, second, third business in this space, I recommend the startup problem just generally because it provides an overview of
Mhm.
to Jason's point, some of the blind spots that you don't necessarily see when going head first into something you may be passionate about. It'll
Yeah.
help you prepare for the risks and then just think strategically about how do I scale this business? How do I grow this business in the appropriate manner so I can find the success that I'm looking for, whatever that may be.
Yeah, no, I love that. Before earlier, Raj with Intel said, serving a customer is the most important thing, and
Mhm.
there's a theme evolving. So I hope everyone attending, kind of hits the easy buzz button on just simplicity and really focusing on the end user. Carrie, kind of taking it back to you, any tools, tips? I know you're working with a lot of women-led startups. So maybe are there any strategies that you recommend to enable them to bridge the funding gap or maybe just, you know, break through that wall?
Um,
Other than reaching out to her directly, innovate
no, no,
growth
no, no.
partners.
I
Yeah.
so I think there's like two things. Number one is on the sales strategy piece. So if you're looking to get funding and you're a female, have a sales strategy, have it be defendable, and speak with confidence. I would say like that is the number one piece is whenever you are doing a presentation, women tend to make themselves small. They tend to underplay their attributes, and they try to make themselves. They just naturally do it. They give away the spotlight. But when you're raising money, you have to make sure that you hold the spotlight and make sure it hangs out on you. So when you have a sales strategy, make it defendable, make it clear, and make sure it's bigger. Aim for the stars because men, that's just what they do. They aim for the stars and then they aim a little higher and say they're going to do it, and people believe them. So we should just do that. So that's number one. And then number two, you were talking about books. So there's actually, I was listening to this podcast. It's called Bossy. It's very interesting. It's like tactical information about women running businesses. But one of the newest or most recent episodes was an interview with a woman who acquires businesses, and she said she was talking about so one of the things that I've done is, we don't need to make this political, but I wasn't necessarily excited about the results of the last election. And so I've been like racking my brain to make it better for me. And this woman said that the best thing that has happened is you've made it, or basically buying businesses is like the best thing that you can do right now. And in the next few years, more women should just buy businesses. So the most recent, and I don't know, I'm trying to do two things at once, but the most recent guest on this podcast, on this Bossy podcast, wrote a book about buying businesses. That's why I was so excited to listen to Jason talk, because I just want to buy a business now. But basically, like, that's what people do. Like, you just need to buy a business. The other thing is that there's a book called Scaling People by Claire Hughes Johnson. She was the COO of Stripe, and it's a highly tactical book. It is thick. And it's
Wow.
a book that we used actually at DoorDash. But if you have like a Series B or Series C company and you need to figure out how to grow the business, this is like the single best book to buy, because it is literally like, do this, have this structure, have these meetings, have this reporting cadence, and it is like chef's kiss. So there it is.
Love that. That's a perfect way to kind of end it. Thank you. I
Sorry.
appreciate you all.